3,000 episodes. We did the calculations. That's over
The studio
36.
lights are already burning hot when Montel Williams walks onto the set. The audience rises, the theme music swells, cameras glide into position, and Montel does what millions of viewers have watched him do countless times before. He stands tall, looks directly into the lens, and takes control of the room. To everyone watching, he appears powerful, focused, and completely unshakable. But beneath his suit, one of his legs feels as though it is being crushed from the inside. His nerves are firing warnings he cannot explain. Parts of his body are going numb. His thoughts occasionally disappear behind a fog so thick that even familiar words become difficult to reach. Yet the red camera light is on, hundreds of people are waiting, and Montel Williams has spent his entire adult life learning how to perform when failure is not an option.
Guys, Montel here. Thanks so much for tuning in to my brand new podcast, Let's Be Blunt with Montel. For 30 minutes.
He smiles. He asks the next question. And almost nobody realizes that the man helping strangers confront their darkest moments is quietly approaching one of the darkest moments of his own life. This is not simply the story of a famous talk show host who became ill. It is the story of a man trained to hide weakness so effectively that even the people meant to help him struggled to understand how much pain he was carrying. It is the story of military discipline, television success, medical dismissal, multiple sclerosis, and a private crisis that came dangerously close to ending everything. And by the time Montel finally learned what was happening inside his body, the answer brought both terrifying uncertainty and an unexpected kind of relief. Because at least now, someone could no longer tell him that the pain was only in his imagination. Long before the Montel Williams Show became a daytime television institution, Montel was a boy growing up in Baltimore, Maryland, born in 1956. He was raised in a working-class household shaped by discipline, responsibility,
Oh my gosh, I could never see doing that. I'd have put Tyler Perry off the first time he said I was phenomenal.
and expectations. His father was a firefighter, and the values surrounding Montel were clear from an early age. Work hard, carry yourself properly, respect authority, and never allow difficult circumstances to become an excuse. Those lessons would help build an extraordinary career. They would also create a habit that later became dangerous. Montel learned to keep moving. When something hurt, he moved. When pressure increased, he focused harder. When people doubted him, he gave them fewer reasons to question his ability. After high school, he entered the Marine Corps. He later attended the Naval Academy Preparatory School and earned his place at the United States Naval Academy, an achievement that placed him inside one of America's most demanding military institutions. Imagine the pressure surrounding a young black serviceman entering environments where very few people looked like him. This next scene is a dramatized reconstruction, but it captures the kind of reality his career demanded. A cramped military control room sits beneath artificial light. Machines hum. Information moves between officers in clipped, precise language. A single incorrect reading could create consequences far beyond the room itself. Montel stands at his position, aware that he is not being judged only as an officer. To some people, whether they admit it or not, he is also being judged as proof of whether someone like him belongs there. He cannot appear distracted. He cannot allow pain, exhaustion, or frustration to show on his face. He must know the information, make the decision, and remain calm. That kind of pressure can break a person. For Montel, it became training. He was commissioned as a naval officer and spent more than 2 decades in military service, including work connected to intelligence, leadership, and the submarine community. His responsibilities demanded accuracy, endurance, and control. When others panicked, he had to remain composed. When the body wanted rest, duty came first. When fear appeared, it had to be placed somewhere private. By the time Montel eventually stepped in,
I'll be walking around going, I was on your show. And I go, when?
To public speaking and television, he already understood something many performers spend years trying to learn. He knew how to command attention. He knew how to read a room. And most importantly, he knew how to remain functional while carrying pressure that nobody else could see. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Montel's career moved in an entirely new direction. His experience as a motivational speaker revealed a natural ability to connect with people. He did not speak like someone studying human struggle from a safe distance. He spoke like someone who had lived inside demanding institutions and understood what discipline could cost. Then came the opportunity that would make his name recognizable across America. The Montel Williams Show launched in 1991. Daytime television was fiercely competitive. Programs fought for attention with emotional confrontations, celebrity revelations, family disputes, and dramatic surprises. Some hosts offered comfort. Others built their brands around chaos.
In the green rush, I've been advocating for the use of this wellness, natural
brought
wellness
something
product.
different. He had the presence of a military officer, the confidence of a motivational speaker, and the emotional directness of someone who was not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. The show addressed relationships, family conflicts, and sensational stories, but it also explored serious social issues. Montel often appeared determined to move beyond entertainment and reach the human problem underneath the spectacle. Viewers responded. The Montel Williams Show became nationally syndicated and ultimately lasted 17 seasons. Montel became one of the most recognizable faces in American daytime television. Every weekday, people welcomed him into their homes. They watched him challenge guests, comfort families, and speak passionately about responsibility, courage, and survival. But during the mid-1990s, while his public career was reaching extraordinary heights, something inside his body began to change. At first, the signs could be ignored. A strange sensation in a leg. A patch of numbness, fatigue that did not match the amount of work he had done. Pain that arrived without an obvious injury. Perhaps he had pushed himself too hard. Perhaps he needed rest. Perhaps the demanding production schedule was simply catching up with him. That explanation would have been convenient. But the symptoms did not disappear. They became harder to predict and more difficult to hide. There were periods of intense leg pain. At times, Montel reportedly felt as though something were gripping or crushing his lower body. Numbness appeared. His energy could collapse.
Hearing from experts in the industry who have dedicated their time and resources to researching and transforming the concept
fog
of
interfered with the sharp mental control on which he had always depended. For a man whose identity had been built around mastery of his own performance, this was not merely uncomfortable. It was terrifying. Montel knew his body. He had survived military training, maintained demanding schedules, and spent years monitoring his reactions under pressure. He understood ordinary exhaustion. This was different. So, he sought medical answers. And this is where the story takes a deeply frustrating turn. Instead of receiving one clear examination followed by an immediate diagnosis, Montel entered a long period of uncertainty. Doctors offered explanations that did not fully account for what he was experiencing. Symptoms were questioned, minimized, or treated separately rather than recognized as part of a larger neurological problem. One appointment led to another. One theory replaced another. And the message Montel often seemed to receive was that nothing clearly serious had been found. But the absence of an answer did not remove the pain. It only made the pain lonelier. Imagine finishing a television recording while one leg feels as though it is burning. The audience applauds. Producers discuss the next episode. Staff members rush through the corridor carrying schedules and paperwork. Montel walks back to his dressing room, closes the door, and finally allows his expression to change. For a few moments, the host disappears. There is only a man sitting alone, trying to understand why his body no longer follows the rules it once followed. Then, someone knocks. The next meeting is beginning. And Montel stands up again. This became the hidden contradiction of his life. The same discipline that made him capable of continuing also made it easier for others to underestimate what he was enduring. A patient who arrives visibly collapsing may immediately communicate urgency. Montel had been trained not to collapse. He could describe terrible pain while sitting upright.
So that's why what our goal at this podcast is to serve as a beacon for truth and transparency.
Speaking clearly and controlling his emotions. He could leave a medical appointment, enter a studio, and host an hour of television. To an outsider, that performance might suggest the problem could not be as serious as he claimed. But performance was never proof that he was well. It was proof that he had been trained to function while suffering. Years passed. The symptoms continued, and the unanswered question became more dangerous than the pain itself. What happens when a person knows something is wrong, but every authority figure keeps failing to name it? Eventually, doubt begins to turn inward. Perhaps you are exaggerating. Perhaps you are losing control. Perhaps this is simply what your life will feel like from now on. Montel has spoken openly about how dark that period became. The combination of severe pain, cognitive symptoms, and repeated failure to receive a satisfying medical explanation pushed him toward a suicidal crisis. That detail changes the meaning of every polished television appearance from those years. The audience saw confidence. Behind the confidence was a man whose suffering had become so relentless that death could appear, in his lowest moments, less frightening than continuing without answers. This was not weakness. It was the result of pain meeting isolation. And there is an important difference between wanting life to end and desperately wanting unbearable suffering to stop. Montel had spent much of his career telling people not to give up. He had encouraged guests to face addiction, trauma, family breakdown, and seemingly impossible circumstances. Now he was confronting a private battle that could not be solved through a motivational speech. He could not order his nerves to behave. He could not discipline numbness out of his body. He could not simply decide to think clearly when neurological fog arrived. For perhaps the first time in his life, determination alone was not enough. Then, in 1999, after years of unexplained symptoms and medical uncertainty, Montel received the diagnosis that finally connected the pieces. Multiple sclerosis. MS is a chronic disease involving the central nervous system. The immune system attacks the protective covering surrounding nerve fibers, disrupting communication between the brain and the rest of the body. Symptoms can vary dramatically, including pain, numbness, weakness, fatigue, vision problems, and cognitive difficulties. There was no simple cure waiting behind the diagnosis. No single treatment could promise that everything would return to normal. But when Montel heard the words, there was also a strange form of validation. The pain was real. The numbness was real. The mental fog was real. He had not imagined it. He had not failed to remain strong. His body was fighting a neurological disease. For years he had been demanding an explanation. Now, that explanation had arrived, and it carried a terrifying new question. What would multiple sclerosis take from him next? His mobility? His independence? His television career? The public identity he had spent decades building? Montel could have chosen silence. Many public figures facing serious illness hide the diagnosis for as long as possible. In the world of television, where careers are tied to consistency, appearance, and advertiser confidence, disclosing an unpredictable neurological disease could create professional risk. Executives might wonder whether he could maintain the schedule. Viewers might begin watching for signs of decline. Every stumble, pause, or tired expression could be interpreted as evidence that the disease was winning. But Montel made a different decision. He spoke publicly about having MS. In doing so, one of daytime television's strongest and most controlled personalities allowed the world to see that strength and illness could exist inside the same person. That disclosure transformed the direction of his public life. Montel Williams was no longer simply interviewing people about their struggles. He was now using his own experience to challenge the way society treated chronic illness, invisible pain, and patients who struggled to make doctors understand what they were feeling. His story carried particular power because he did not match the image many people associated with serious neurological disease. He was commanding. He was active. He was still working. He looked healthy on television, and that was precisely the point. A person can look composed while their nervous system is under attack. A person can smile while experiencing severe pain. A person can continue succeeding while privately wondering how long they can survive. After his diagnosis, Montel continued hosting the Montel Williams Show for nearly another decade. Think about what that required. Daily television already demands relentless preparation. Producers organize guests, researchers verify stories, legal teams assess risk, and hosts must remain emotionally engaged through repeated recordings. Montel was doing all of that while managing a disease known for unpredictability. Some mornings, he could not know exactly what his body would allow him to do. But when the cameras turned on, he continued. This time, however, the discipline had a different purpose. Before the diagnosis, he used discipline to conceal a mystery. After the diagnosis, he used it to manage a known enemy. Montel also began speaking more openly about chronic pain treatment. One of the most controversial parts of his advocacy involved medical cannabis. Today, conversations surrounding medical cannabis are far more common, but during the earlier years of Montel's advocacy, the subject carried enormous stigma. For a mainstream television personality with a military background, speaking publicly in favor of cannabis-based treatment risked mockery and reputational damage. Critics could easily reduce a complicated medical argument to a joke. Montel refused to treat it as one. He described his position through the experience of a patient living with serious pain. His argument was not that every treatment worked for every person. It was that people suffering from chronic illness deserved access to legitimate options and honest conversations with medical professionals. The issue became deeply personal because he remembered what it felt like not to be believed. He remembered explaining symptoms and leaving without answers. He remembered the years when pain dominated his private life while the public saw only a successful television host, and he understood that dismissal could become dangerous. Dismiss the symptom, and the disease may progress without recognition. Dismiss the patient, and they may stop asking for help. Dismiss the treatment conversation, and people in pain may be left without options that could improve their quality of life. That word dismissal runs through Montel Williams' entire story. As a young black officer, he entered spaces where some people may have been prepared to dismiss his capability before seeing his performance. As a patient, he encountered a medical process that repeatedly failed to explain or fully validate what he was experiencing. As an advocate, he faced people prepared to dismiss his position because the treatment he discussed made them uncomfortable. And perhaps most painfully, his own training had taught him to dismiss the visible signs of his suffering. Keep moving. Do not complain. Do not allow pain to control the mission. Those principles helped Montel survive demanding environments. But no survival skill works perfectly in every situation. The armor that protects you in one chapter can trap you in another. For Montel, the ability to hide pain became so powerful that the world continued seeing strength even when he was in desperate need of help. The Montel Williams Show ended its original run in 2008 after 17 seasons. For many viewers, the program remains the image most closely connected to his name: the studio audience, the intense conversations, the emotional confrontations, and Montel walking across the stage with complete command of the room. But the end of the show did not mark the end of his public mission. Montel continued advocating for multiple sclerosis awareness, chronic pain patients, and veterans. His military history gave him a natural connection to servicemen and women facing the difficult transition from structured service into civilian life. He understood what it meant to build an identity around discipline. He also understood what could happen when disciplined people became afraid to admit they were struggling. Over time, Montel became increasingly candid about the suicidal thoughts he had experienced before receiving his MS diagnosis. That honesty may be one of the most important parts of his legacy. Public figures often tell stories only after the pain has been cleaned up and given a perfect ending. The struggle becomes a neat obstacle. The diagnosis becomes an inspirational turning point. The audience is reassured that courage solved everything. Montel's reality is more complicated. The diagnosis did not erase multiple sclerosis. Advocacy did not guarantee freedom from pain. Success did not make him invulnerable. His story matters because survival was not one dramatic victory. It became a daily decision. There were treatments to manage, symptoms to monitor, public misconceptions to challenge, and private fears to confront. The man who had once controlled military information and later controlled a television studio now had to accept that some parts of his own body could not be fully controlled. That acceptance was not surrender, it was adaptation. And this may explain why people searching for Montel Williams today still find a man speaking with urgency about health, dignity, and access to care. He did not disappear when the talk show ended. He redirected the authority that television gave him. Instead of using every interview to reveal someone else's pain, he began using his own pain to reveal failures in the systems surrounding patients. The most powerful part of Montel Williams' story is not that he remained strong every moment. It is that he eventually redefined strength. Strength was no longer pretending nothing hurt. Strength became admitting that the pain had once brought him close to death. Strength became telling millions of people that a successful career does not protect someone from despair. Strength became standing beside patients whose symptoms could not be seen and saying, "I believe you." Consider the contrast. A young officer learns that one wrong decision can endanger everyone around him. A television host learns that one moment of emotional hesitation can lose control of an audience. a patient learns that admitting uncertainty may be the only way to receive help. These are three different versions of Montel Williams, but they are connected by the same internal command. Do not fail. For years, that command pushed him forward. Eventually, he had to replace it with something more humane. Do not suffer alone. That lesson may be more valuable than anything ever broadcast on his television show. Because somewhere, another person is sitting inside a doctor's office describing pain they cannot prove. Another person is being told that their tests appear normal. Another person is leaving with no diagnosis, wondering whether anyone truly believes them. Another high-performing professional is smiling through a workday while privately reaching a breaking point. Montel's story cannot diagnose those people, but it can remind them that invisible suffering is still suffering, and that continuing to demand answers is not attention-seeking. It is survival. The fictionalized control room we imagined at the beginning was built around a simple idea. Montel spent years in environments where weakness appeared dangerous. But the greatest danger in his later life was not weakness. It was silence. The silence between symptoms and diagnosis. The silence between public success and private despair. The silence created whenever someone in pain decides that explaining it again is no longer worth the humiliation of being dismissed. Montel broke that silence. He did it publicly, imperfectly, and at considerable personal risk. And because he did, countless people living with multiple sclerosis saw someone familiar speaking openly about a disease that can make patients feel isolated from their own bodies. They saw that MS did not have one face. It could belong to a military officer. It could belong to a television host. It could belong to someone who appeared powerful, articulate, and completely in control. Montel Williams spent years encouraging other people to tell the truth on television. The most consequential truth he ever shared may have been his own. That behind the confidence was pain. Behind the discipline was fear. Behind the diagnosis was nearly a decade of unanswered questions. And behind the advocacy was a man determined to make sure another patient would not have to approach the edge of hopelessness before someone finally listened. So the next time you remember Montel Williams standing beneath those studio lights, do not see only the famous talk show host. See the Marine. See the naval officer. See the patient walking into appointment after appointment. See the man returning to the stage while his body sent signals nobody could yet explain. And see the advocate who eventually turned his most private suffering into a public warning. Pain does not become less real because someone carries it well. Strength does not mean never needing help. And sometimes, the person who appears most in control is fighting the hardest battle in the entire room. What part of Montel Williams' story surprised you most? The years he spent searching for a diagnosis, the private crisis behind his television success, or his decision to become an outspoken advocate after learning he had multiple sclerosis? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe, because the next story may reveal another side of a familiar face that the cameras never allowed us to see.